Hey guys, back again with another video. This time another review, and that is for Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. A lot of you probably know that I'm a pretty hardcore Zelda fan, I'd say. I've played every game in the series, basically, other than like the CDI ones, which I don't really count those as Zelda games, and neither does Nintendo. So needless to say, I was pretty excited for this. Obviously, a direct sequel to A Link to the Past, not with the same Link or the same Zelda. Like the whole Zelda timeline, I don't know anything. I don't know, the Zelda story, overarching like timeline and story has always kind of confused me. But I was super excited for this game. One of my most anticipated games of 2013. A Link to the Past is my second favorite Zelda game, so obviously I was excited for this. I was like when they first showed footage of it, the fact that it basically takes place in the same world as A Link to the Past, and it generally is kind of the same. The Dark World in here, called Lorule, is actually different. It's laid out a bit different. It's generally kind of the same layout, but it feels different. This doesn't feel lazy. And I know a lot of people were worried that was going to be the case, that this game might feel lazy. And this game, I'll tell you right now, it's probably the best Zelda game I've played since Wind Waker, and that's going back a while now. Usually with these newer Zelda games, there's always like one or two or three things that really bug me in them. Like Skyward Sword, it was the crazy amount of padding. Twilight Princess, it was the wolf sections. The DS games, it was the entire thing. So to have a game like this come around, another Zelda game where I like the entire thing from start to finish, and I basically have no complaints with this game. Any kind of complaint I would have with this game is like a nitpick. I might go into that later, but this is just a fantastic game. And if you've kind of like fallen out of love with Zelda with the later entries, and you really like the old school top-down ones, you'll really love this. This game is just flat out brilliant, and it's definitely going to be in the running for my favorite game of 2013. I guess I'll start with the story. Don't want to talk too much about it. Basically, Ganon is not the villain in this game. It's a villain named Yuga. Now, I don't want to spoil too much of this, but basically, Zelda gets trapped in a painting, and you've got to save her, basically, and you have to find, sages. It's one of those storylines I don't want to talk too much about it, because there's actually a lot of surprises that I wasn't expecting. Right off the bat, this game doesn't throw a lot of story at you or a dialogue like other Zelda games. Other Zelda games have like massive 2-hour intros with tons of text and tons of tutorials and hand-holding. This game, just right out of the gate, there's not much story, there's not much dialogue, and you're kind of left to your own devices almost immediately. Which, of course, that's one of the best things about this game, I think. So really, the story doesn't get too involved up until like the end. The end is where I really started enjoying the storyline, because I thought for the most part it kind of just, I don't know, it came and went at various points, and there wasn't too much story really in this game. But towards the end, it gets better, and I actually think the story outline overall is quite good in this game. But like a lot of other Zeldas, I don't, it didn't blow me away or anything like that. Honestly, Majora's Mask is probably the only Zelda, maybe Wind Waker, that actually, to me, had a great storyline. The storyline is definitely good here, but honestly, the storyline's never really why I played the Zelda games. It's the gameplay. And I guess I'll get right into that. Okay, so top-down Link to the Past. But there's a few main differences here. First thing you'll notice immediately with this game is the speed. This is a really fast and great controlling game. You really feel in control in this game. And it's really fast paced, and that's what I noticed immediately and made me enjoy it a lot more because of that. Like I said earlier, no hand-holding in this game. It plays out like the typical top-down Zelda games where you kind of, you go through dungeons and, you've got your overworld that you kind of traverse. But in this game, they've got the item rental system, like I know a lot of people know this, where you can rent every item in the game pretty much right from the start, and each dungeon will use a certain item, and they'll let you know at the front of the dungeons. So you can basically go in any order you want with these dungeons, which is really cool, and it changes the game up in ways that I really like. A lot of people were worried that maybe the dungeons would all feel like kind of like the same difficulty. I didn't feel that was the case, especially with the low rule dungeons. Some of them were harder than others, I felt. All of them really creative. I'll talk about the dungeons a bit later, because I've always found that an important factor of Zelda games. But like I said before, no handholding. This game never really tells you where to go other than marking X's on your map for where like the dungeons are or where you need to be going next in the early parts of the game. And that's it. You got to kind of figure your way around these environments and puzzles, and the game will never bother you about this stuff. There's hint glasses that you can use in the game where you can like talk to ghosts and play coins, and they'll kind of tell you what to do in certain areas. But it's refreshing to get a game like this that doesn't treat you like an idiot. That said, the game isn't difficult by any means. It starts out actually harder, and then it gets easier towards the end, the more heart pieces I started gathering. Because some of the enemies in this game hit hard. I wasn't expecting some of those enemies, like the bigger enemies with the bombs that keep chucking them at you. Like those guys, when I first encountered them, I almost died. And my total death count, I died 4 times, and that's... I know a lot of people have died a lot less. I don't know, maybe I just sucked, and I died a lot more in the beginning. But with fairies, fairies don't count to your death total too, and I had to use a lot of fairies in the bottles like I always do. So it's not a super challenging game. Like some of the puzzles are a bit tricky and took me a while to figure out. Especially like there's these puzzle rooms in the game where you get like rewards at the end of them, and they're kind of like thrown about the overworld. Those puzzle rooms are actually quite tricky. Some of the harder puzzles I've seen in Zelda games, but they're totally optional. It's the combat that's a bit tricky in this, just because, I don't know, I find a lot of the enemies do a lot of damage. Now, that said, though, it's definitely the hardest Zelda game since, maybe Majora's Mask, to be honest. But it's still nothing, it's still nothing crazy. You'll be able to get through this game pretty fine, unless you play the hero mode, which you get after beating the game, which I don't know. I don't know why they don't just give you that in the beginning, where basically enemies do like double damage. It's basically a harder mode if you want that hardcore challenge. Now with these items, the interesting thing, like the flow of this game was different compared to a lot of Zelda games to me, because what would happen is in the beginning I rented every item, and instead of going to the dungeons, I explored the entire map, the entire Hyrule, and using these items to access heart pieces. So I had a shit ton of heart pieces and items and rupees right in the beginning of the game, before I even took on that many dungeons. So in low rule, I did like 5 dungeons in a row. No Zelda game can you do that in. Like you do one dungeon, then immediately do another, then another, because you have all these items, and you can buy them too permanently for like a really marked up price. And a little bit more than halfway through the game, I already had all the items you could buy from this shop. There's fast travel in the game, so you don't have to keep constantly traveling back to this shop every time you want to rent items. I forgot to say, when you die, all your items go back to the shop, and you have to rent them again. But because death doesn't happen too much, it's I don't know. It's kind of like this risk reward system. But if the game was more challenging, I could see it being more effective. But because the game was pretty easy, I didn't. I don't know. It wasn't too effective for me. I wasn't going through these dungeons worried that I was going to die and lose all my items, because even if I did, I could afford to rent them all again, because it's really cheap to rent these, and rupees are all over the place in this game. But the one thing I loved in this game is the fact that anytime you find rupees, you know you're not going to be at your maximum limit. Other Zelda games had this problem where pretty much every Zelda game, actually, except for this one, where you'd have like your maximum amount of rupees, and then you open a random chest and it's like, oh, 50 rupees. Oh, but you can't get them because your wallet's already full. And this game, that problem is completely gone here, which I really liked that. Now, this game does things a bit differently when it comes to the Dark World, called Low Rule in this game. In A Link to the Past, the whole Dark World was open to you. In this game, the only way to access it is through these kind of gates, where you have to use the wall ability, where you kind of go into the walls, the wall ability, which that's the new thing. That's another new thing with this game. So you enter these gates, and there's like each kind of area of the Dark World is gated, so you can't travel from one area to the other unless you go back to Hyrule and find those gates that kind of transport you to those sections of the Dark World. It sounds like it might be annoying, but I kind of actually liked it. I don't think I'd want this kind of mechanic to return in a Zelda game, but it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, because you can kind of take one area of the Dark World at a time, and it was less overwhelming for me, I thought. But this wall ability, this is the new thing with this game too, where it really changes how the dungeons, how you think about the dungeons, because you can go into the walls, and you gotta consider perspective and 3D space, so you can kind of go around walls and access areas like across chasms that you wouldn't think you could get over in like a previous Zelda game, but in this, just use your wall ability and you can get over there. And a lot of the puzzles use this, and some boss battles too, and it's always creative anytime you have to do this. I never was bored with that mechanic. I thought it might be overused, but it never was. It was always fun, because they kept giving you these really inventive puzzles to do with this mechanic. And it's nifty to see too, and it uses up a magic meter, which this is another new thing. All your items use up magic, and you have this magic meter that refills over time. There's no so you have unlimited bombs, unlimited arrows, and things like that. Again, this is one of those things that I really like about this game. I kind of hope they keep it, for next Zeldas. And I want to talk about that too. It's like I like a lot of the things they've done in this game, the item rental system, the wall mechanic, and things like that. I'm very curious to see what they've learned from this game. What they're going to carry over from this game to the Wii U Zelda. Personally, the item rental system, it's cool for this game. I don't know if I want to see it again, though. I like when Zelda games keep trying things new. Most of the so I want to try to see if they're going to do something else to keep it non-linear, because this game is definitely not linear, without the item rental system. Try something new. So, and the wall ability type thing, I don't want that to return either. Now, the hand-holding, the lack of hand-holding and tutorials and endless amounts of text, that I want to see make a reappearance in this next Wii U. Whether it will or not, I don't know. But yeah, the dungeons themselves, I did admit, the first few dungeons in Hyrule, I wasn't too impressed with them. They were very easy and pretty basic and simplistic, and they didn't really have a theme to them, I felt. But they're still solid. But the low rule dungeons are amazing. I really liked them. One dungeon in particular, it basically uses wall masters to really interesting effects. Like all the puzzles in the dungeon revolve around wall masters, and you kind of have to manipulate them to break walls and stuff like that. And all the puzzles in that particular dungeon were really creative, and that goes for all the Dark World dungeons. Every dungeon I went into was really impressive. And the cool thing about them too is that you can find hidden items in these dungeons that you can completely miss. You can get Master Sword upgrades that you can completely miss. There's a lot of missable items in this game, so each player is probably going to find the other items, items that other players didn't find. For instance, the Pegasus boots, I didn't find them till the very end of the game, which was completely odd to me. Another thing about this game, it seems minor, the map system is fantastic. I've always found the map systems in Zelda games to be pretty confusing, and in this game, it's so easy to tell where you are by just looking on that second touchscreen. The maps are laid out very nicely. You'll never get lost in these dungeons. You'll always kind of know where you are, which I really appreciated that. Now, visuals. Now, when they first showed off this game, I gotta say, the visual style wasn't that appealing to me. And right up until I played it, I wasn't really feeling it. Now, when in motion, when playing this game on your 3DS, it looks fantastic. I really like the look of this game, actually. Everything's just really vibrant and it's cartoony, kind of, but not overly cartoony. And there's a lot of detail. I don't know, it's one of those visual styles that looks unappealing when you watch videos online, but when you actually sit down and play the game, it actually really looks nice. And I love just I don't know, I just really like the art style. And the 3D in this game is fantastic. I played with the 3D all the way on the entire game, and it really makes things pop, because, each dungeon has multiple floors now, right, because of this wall merging ability. So you can kind of like hop between floors really easily in this game, and that when you're looking at that in 3D, it looks really cool and actually helps you gauge your jumps and whatnot. So I really like the 3D in this game. Music, phenomenal. It's a lot of like remixed tunes from like Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past and other Zelda games, but they're really fantastic remixes. And you know, anytime a song would play in this game from like Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time, it was like, yes, awesome. And the remixes are really good and creative, and they all sound different. They're all very different from one another. But yeah, I think that about covers it. You know, like nitpicks, I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Like, it's just a really consistent game from start to finish. It's totally enjoyable. You know, it's one of those games that just, I don't know. I can't find a single complaint. If you know, if you like to Link to the Past, if you like Zelda games, action adventure games, hell, honestly, this is like a must-have for the 3DS. No matter what types of games you like, I gotta recommend this game. And it's interesting because the hype going into it, there wasn't much hype going into it, which I found kind of odd. But this game totally surprised me. Where would it rank on my top Zelda games? It's hard to say. Maybe around like fifth or sixth. I think it's right on par with Link's Awakening as far as the 2D Zelda games go. I don't like it as much as Link to the Past, and I don't like it as much as Wind Waker or Majora's Mask. But it's really it's up there, and by far definitely one of the best games of 2013. So yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.